I remember years ago, one of my biggest insecurities was that I grew up overweight. And the goal of mine was always to get in better shape. The vision I saw for myself was to always be in much better shape. When I was growing up, I used to have really bad asthma. And because I had such bad asthma, I had to take these steroids, and the steroids made me gain like a lot of weight. But it wasn't like good weight, it wasn't like muscle weight. It was like fat, like I got fat. And it was so annoying because it caused me to get like bullied, and people would make fun of me. And you always felt inferior because other people could do like other boys my age could do push-ups and I couldn't do any push-ups at all. It was the worst thing ever. Like I would see dudes crank out like 20, 30, 40, 50 push-ups and I couldn't even do like one. Literally you couldn't do one. And so I remember when I was in kind of like the end of high school and early college, I said to myself, I was going to get in much better shape. I was going to bulk up. I was going to be far more aesthetic. And I kind of made a promise to myself that I would never look worse than most people. I would always look better than most people. It didn't mean that I was going to be the most aesthetic guy. Didn't mean that I was always going to be in perfect shape. Didn't mean that I will always have six-pack abs. But I always set the standard as I have to be better physically than average. I have to be better than most people. If most people are fat, I can't be fat. If most people have a six-pack, I have to have a better six-pack. That was the kind of mindset that I had. So when I was in college, I was trying to bulk up. And I kind of did a lot of the things you see in the magazines at the time and the forums. I tried the drink a gallon of milk every day for like 5 days. I tried that. It's hard to do. I don't recommend it. I tried doing like the micro meals where you eat like 5 or 6 meals a day and they're all like 500 calories. So that way by the end of the day, you've eaten like 3,000 calories or 3,500 calories, whatever. I've tried that. That worked okay, but they gave me stomach issues for reasons I might get into in a different video if you guys are interested in me talking about it. But, and I remember always working out so consistently. That was what I remember for a while. That was like a weird thing for me. Like me and my friend would work out all the time. We'd work out at least like 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. And we found that we weren't gaining any muscle. Our strength would go up, our bench would go up, our squat would go up, everything else would go up. But we weren't building like any real muscle. We would look in the mirror and be the exact same size. Like our size wasn't increasing. And it took me about a year to really figure out what was preventing me from gaining weight, what was preventing me from getting muscle. And it was one of those simple things that once you figure it out, the process of bulking becomes so much simpler. But this is just what I kind of found to be true. And basically the reason why we weren't bulking up is because we weren't increasing our calorie intake enough to be in a caloric surplus. And I know that sounds simple. I know for a lot of people, maybe nowadays in 2024, that's common sense. But it wasn't that common sense back then. People knew to eat more food. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't really make the essential calculations to know exactly how much food they should be eating and also base it on their body type. Now, I've seen people say, well, body types are fake, body types don't matter. I think that's a bit bullshit. I do think that certain body types definitely gain and lose weight or maintain weight in different degrees. For example, I consider myself a mesomorph. This is just basically based on the different three types that I've seen, the three essential types, we'll call it that. This is the type that fits me, in my opinion, the most. I don't gain weight that easily, but I also don't lose weight that easily. I think my body naturally takes a more muscular shape without me putting in as much effort as other people might have to put in. But it's a bit of a hit or miss. I personally like it. I like to be a mesomorph. I think it's the best of both worlds. But again, it takes more effort to gain muscle and keep it on, but it also takes a lot more effort to gain body fat. And the reverse is true. It takes more effort to lose the body fat, and it also takes a lot of effort to lose the muscle. If I start to lose muscle, I can get it back pretty quickly. And that's for other factors too. Your body sort of almost has like a muscle memory of sorts. Like once you gain muscle, even if you were to lose it, by the time you get back in the gym and start working out heavy again, you'll start to gain muscle back. So that's part of it. But as far as gaining weight and getting the bulk, I think a lot of people really struggle with understanding how much food they should be eating to actually gain size. Now, again, you have to figure out what your body type is. And I'm not going to give the actual scientific classifications of these three body types, but I think when it comes down to it, there are some people who are in the middle. They gain weight or lose weight relatively moderately. It doesn't lean one way or the other. That's kind of where I am. And I feel like if you're in that camp, if you're in that boat, I think just kind of eating about 500 calories over your BMR, and I'll get into what a BMR is in just a second. I think if you eat about 500 calories over your BMR to start, you can see where your progress goes from there. And usually what I try to do is aim for about 0.5 to 1 pound of weight gained in a week. That's kind of where I like to start, and I kind of go from there. If I'm gaining fat too much, I'll taper off a little bit. If I'm gaining muscle, if I'm not gaining weight quickly enough, I'll increase a little bit. I think if you are someone who gains weight super easily, and you can kind of see people who gain weight easily, you probably know who you are. You're probably the kind of person that just body fat just sticks on you. You're probably a little bit more round. I would probably start by increasing your calories maybe 200 above your BMR, and then kind of go from there. And then if you're someone who's naturally skinny, if you're someone who kind of, you've probably all seen those dudes who like have six-pack abs, but they're like 110 pounds and they're like 6 feet tall. They're just super thin, and they'll eat like tons of food, but they never seem to like gain weight. They're just naturally like kind of narrow and thin. I think if you're one of those types of people, probably shoot for about 600 calories above your BMR to start, and then go from there. And that's kind of like those Michael Phelps dudes who just burn calories so fast that they're never really gaining that much muscle. Like I think Michael Phelps, when he was swimming, would eat about 5,000 calories a day. I don't know how true that is, but he seems like the kind of guy who's naturally just thin. He probably burns off calories super quickly. So I can probably see it being true. But you have to figure out which of those 3 areas you're in, and then kind of eat calories above your maintenance level, above your BMR, to gain weight. Now, you've heard me mention earlier in this video BMR. What is a BMR? BMR is your basal metabolic rate. And basically what that means, to put it super simply, is it's just how much weight it's how many calories your body burns from you doing zero. It's from you doing absolutely nothing. If you just sit in bed all day, then, that's how much your body burns. Basically, what I recommend you do is use a BMR calculator, because the BMR calculator is going to sit there. It's going to take in your height, it's going to take in your weight, and it's going to take in your current levels of activity, which is important. And it's going to figure out from there what your BMR is. Once you get your BMR, and once you figure out what your daily maintenance calories are, that's when you're going to try to increase the calories in order to gain weight. Increase it by 500 if you're a mesomorph, maybe increase it by 600 or 700 if you're someone who is more naturally skinny. I always get these two confused, but I think that's an endomorph. And if you're an ectomorph, I think that is if you're naturally more big, if you gain weight more easily, maybe start off slow and increase your calories by about maybe 100 or 200 or 300, just to see how much weight you gain. And be sure to track it every single week at the exact same time on the exact same day, just to see where you are, because weight fluctuates a lot. Like weight can fluctuate a lot in a single day. So that's what I recommend doing, and that's one of those things that really kept me from really gaining muscle and really getting a good bulk back when I was in college. Now, once I started doing that, once I calculated my BMR, once I figured out how much my general activity level is and had a decent idea of how many calories my body burned per day, then it was much easier for me to kind of sit there and put on muscle and gain weight. Now, I think nowadays one of the things I made a mistake on back then, and I would shift this nowadays, and I have been shifting this lately, is I would do mini bulks. I think mini bulks are a bit better. I've seen some people who do like full on bulks for like months at a time, and you have to play around with this. I think a lot of times when it comes to weightlifting, a lot of it's trial and error. Even if you know the science, and even if you know what you should be doing, there are some things that are going to differentiate from person to person. So you're going to have to play around with certain things. But my belief is that you should do more mini bulks. Maybe take about a month, 2 months to kind of bulk and see how much progress you've made. See if you've gained X amount of fat, see if you've gained X amount of weight, and see if you've gained X amount of muscle. And then from that point, if you feel comfortable, you can either continue the bulk or start to go on like a mini cut. Does that make sense? I know that sounds like a lot of back and forth, a lot of ballooning, but I think that's a better way to kind of maintain a decent physique year round, rather than going on these extreme bulks and then having to do these extreme cuts. Now, anything can work out well. There are some people who can do a bulk for like a whole year or maybe a whole 2 years. And some people who probably need to do a bulk for a whole year or 2 years, depending on if they naturally are thin or if they, you know, have it find it difficult for them to gain weight. Maybe a year or 2 years of bulking is good. Again, you have to play with this bit. But one of the issues I've seen with a lot of people, and luckily I haven't fallen into this trap, but I've seen a lot of people fall into this trap, is they go on these long bulks and they get super comfortable with just eating more food. And what I found is that when they get super comfortable eating more food, it becomes just a habit at that point. And it becomes a habit that's hard to break. And so rather than say go on a bulk for 6 months, the 6-month bulk becomes a 6-year bulk. And no longer is it a bulk, you're just fat. And then it's hard to lose the weight. Not because you can't, not because your body just won't let you, just because you've built up such a bad habit of just eating so much food and not doing a cut, not doing enough cardio, not eating in a caloric deficit, that you struggle to change your habits. You just struggle to do the necessary things to get into that cutting phase. Also, I've also found that once you start to cut, you start to lose a little bit of strength. Depending on the cut, depending on how severe it is, it can be a lot of strength or it can be a little bit of strength. But losing any amount of strength, I've personally found to be a little bit disheartening. It kind of fucks with you psychologically. And I feel that a lot of people, when they start to do those bulks and they go and say like a 6-month bulk or a year bulk or a 2-year bulk, they've built up so much strength because their weight has increased. It becomes difficult to see that number go down. If say you're putting up 230 on bench during your bulk, you might start to cut, and that 230 bench might start dropping to like 210 or 200, maybe even lower. Depends on, again, it's person to person, and depends on the bulk, depends on what you were doing during the bulk. But you'll probably start to see the number decrease. And for some people, they want to see that 230. It's like an ego boost. Like if I go to the gym, I have to bench at least 230, if not more. And if I start to see the number go down, I feel like a failure. I feel like I'm not making progress. And if I don't feel like I'm making progress, I have to do the things that gave me the progress, which is the bulk. So they go again on this eternal bulk and it never ends. And then they just look fat. To each their own. If you want to keep getting stronger and you don't care about the aesthetics, then do just that. But if you're the kind of person that cares about aesthetics, and you probably do if you're watching this, I wouldn't care as much about the number that you're putting up on the different workouts. I'm not saying you shouldn't be trying to progress. I'm not saying you shouldn't be trying to improve and increase and lift heavier weights. But I think if you cling too much on a specific number while you're doing the bulk or while you're doing the cut, I think you're going to kind of sacrifice yourself a little bit. If you're benching 230 and it's time to cut and you find that you've gone from 230 bench to 220, like 220 is difficult, I wouldn't let that get in my head. I would just understand that it's because you're it's because you're cutting, it's because you're losing weight, because you're eating less, that naturally your strength's gonna go down. And then from there, I would just tailor my strategy. You know, if you're decreasing in your weights and you're not lifting 230 like you used to be, okay, we'll lift 200 maybe and do some drop sets. Or lift your 220 and maybe do pyramid sets or something like that. I don't want to make this video too complicated because the whole video is supposed to be about bulking, but hopefully you understand the point that I'm making. When the number starts to go down and you start to lose a little bit of strength, don't let that discourage you, and don't let that put you in that perpetual cycle of this eternal bulk that I feel like a lot of people fall prey to. Do your bulk, figure out what your BMR is, increase your calories accordingly, and in my personal opinion, do it in mini spurts so that way you're not just becoming this fat piece of shit in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understood this. If you did, please like the video. Please share it with somebody that could benefit from it. And please be sure to subscribe to the channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. So please help me reach that goal. But until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye.